Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. This is Sammy, your host, and this is a continuation episode from Mark Metry, part 2, and we've been talking about social anxiety and how it gets in the way of making sales. Really, when it pertains to a sales rep, someone who wants to get into the industry, or a sales leader, anyone that's doing something that they might not have had success with, or they might have a little bit of angst going into, can develop anxieties around. And right now in this episode, Mark gets into how to really get in front of that, what to actually do so that you can get in front of any situation and make happen whatever you're trying to make happen. So I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let you listen to the rest of our interview. This is part 2 of a 3-part series, so we still have one more after this. But this is great stuff that can be applicable to anyone. So as always, thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I really hope you enjoy this interview.
Yeah, for sure. So, I would say a few things. Number one is you really have to sort of what I call, you have to create your own world before you step into the world. And so what I find really interesting is that for many introverts, and basically just in terms of definitions, basically what an introvert means is that your brain has a natural tendency to focus inside, to focus and be more introspective. So like an introvert's brain, they are just naturally more focused on their internal environment. Whereas extroverts, in the way that their brain is built, is they're more focused on the external environment. And so what I find to be really helpful is before you even hop on a call or do whatever, you really have to sit down by yourself and create your own world. So basically what that means is, you could do this on a walk. You could do this with, a conversation with a friend. You could do this with a journal or by writing things down. And basically what you want to do is you really want to, going back to what I said, is you have to choose who you are. And you do that by identifying what's the most important to you and really any pitfalls that you can imagine in your day and how you're going to approach them. And so, for example, for me, one of the things that I do is I try to focus on what are the most important things to me? So for example, today I was I'm really focused on focusing on my podcast and getting these episodes done because I really want to help people. I want to grow it. Number 2, I have all these meetings with people. I really want to make sure that I'm able to be myself in front of them because for all I know, this could be my last podcast interview ever. God forbid that happens. And so basically you start off with just a very few simple basic aims. And you really have to make sure that these are not just professional, these are also personal too. And so a lot of times people in my journal, they say, hey, I got to call these 10 people. I got to make sure I prepare for this meeting. That's great and everything. But you also have to address yourself first, right? So that may be hey, I'm worried about this. I kind of have this underlying anxiety about my finances or this family member. And so you really have to sort of address who you are on a more personal level. And then you can sort of address these external aspects of hey, I got to go to this meeting. I got to, close this sale for this company in order to, increase my commissions or what have you. And so I would say that's step 1. You really have to sit down before the day starts and create your own version of the internal world. So, and again, that sounds simple. Yeah, go ahead.
So when you say address your internal world, are you saying journal and come to a conclusion on what you think about it? Or what do you mean by addressing?
Yeah. So, everyone is different. I use a journal. However, for some people, they take a long morning walk, or some people, they have a long morning drive where they sort of sit there and instead of rather just letting themselves overthink about all the stresses and anxieties, you sort of sit there and you're like, hey, here are my intentions for the day. Here's what we're going to focus on. Here are the most important things. Here are things that I may be nervous about. Like, I don't know how this meeting is going to go. And just simply writing those things down sort of builds more stability in a person's mind. So that's number one. Number two is I'm a big fan of like managing your biochemistry, as long as it doesn't include like drugs or like anything that's bad for you or unhealthy things. So like I'm a huge fan of making sure that like you sleep well at night, you have some form of exercise, you're eating healthy, maybe you take some certain supplements. So I'm definitely a big fan of that stuff. And then number three is I would say I have yet to come across a better tool for kind of what I said about establishing your identity and also any kind of performance issues than mindfulness meditation. And I'm sure that a lot of us have heard of meditation and maybe we have different beliefs around it. But out of all like the science that I've read, mindfulness meditation is probably like the best thing that you could do for social anxiety. And like, for example, like even in 2009, Stanford did the study. And basically what they found out is that a lot of people who have social anxiety, they also have issues with substance abuse and social isolation and depression and work performance issues. And a lot of the times when you sort of boil that down, it comes down to sort of how they think that their image is perceived by other people. And that's social anxiety. And so, through a result of these, different studies, and people can look it up, it's called like the Stanford Felipe Golden experiment. They really found that specifically mindfulness meditation is probably the fastest, most sustainable way to sort of stabilize somebody's brain and to get them to not be socially anxious and for them to choose their own identity rather than just sort of stepping out into the world and then letting anyone's perception of you dictate your identity, which then controls your behavior and how you act. So I would say those two things are definitely huge. And then, I mean, I could talk, there's more things I can mention, but I think those are great places to start.
Wow. Okay, so you mentioned a couple things. You said that you defined social anxiety just now. Define that again, because I want to make sure there's not a misconception on what social anxiety actually. We probably should have started with this, but now that I heard you say this, I'm thinking, you know what? Because you said so many things that I think a lot of people experience that have never even thought to be, to have social anxiety. Maybe it needs to be defined. What exactly is social anxiety?
Yeah. So basically, social anxiety is this fixed perception. It's a fixed lens. So imagine like glasses, right? So imagine like these glasses, they are social anxiety. So when they get put on, whether you've had social anxiety your entire life or you get put in a very socially anxious, stressful situation, all of a sudden, it's almost like this lens gets put on your brain. And basically what this lens does is it filters everything you see. So the same way that if you put on sunglasses, you see the world literally in sort of a darker filter, the same is true with social anxiety. And basically what this lens is that basically like if people perceive you based on who you think you are, then you're going to somehow be embarrassed or judged, or people are going to hate you. And so really what it is like you sort of have this false perception of yourself. And then that false perception of yourself then has to do with how you think other people perceive you and how other people perceive you as you suck or you're not as great. Or sometimes it's also even the opposite. Sometimes this can happen a lot with people who are very like successful or they have a certain title. A lot of times it's like leaders, managers, bosses, where a lot of people look up to them in a very high regard, but they themselves look very, very much downly on themselves. So then it creates sort of this hollow feeling where they're not really living their life. They're not really able to be themselves in front of other people. And so it definitely runs the gambit. Right. It definitely depends. But in the most basic way, social anxiety is this fixed perception that there is something wrong with who you truly are. And unless you work like very hard to hide that, then people are going to find out who you are. And then they're going to judge you and make fun of you. and embarrass you, even though that's not really true. That may have happened once or twice or earlier in your past. And really what it's like, it really comes from experiencing a socially traumatic event where basically what happens is your brain is now stretched to this level to now where you sort of, I don't want to say you start seeing these things in front of you, but you start to experience it. So it's like someone who was in like a really bad car accident, right? Like, for example, they may not get in a car anymore, or whenever they get into a car, they sort of like, they feel their heartbeat tense up. Any kind of car that drives fast, they feel like they're about to get hit. It's sort of like the same general rough analogy, but when it comes to their social circles, how they're perceived by other people. And the worst part about social anxiety, and actually like why I decided to for example, like write my book about it and dedicate so much of my life to it, is that social anxiety is so far encompassing, and it's actually one of the most serious problems that we have today, because it leads to addiction, it leads to social isolation, it leads to suicide, it leads to people not doing the career they actually want to do, it leads to people being stressed out, it leads to having a low self-esteem, having no motivation. Humans are very social. So if you have sort of a what I would call like a mental disposition to have some issues around, the social aspect of life, unfortunately, that's going to be a very debilitating condition that most people never even realize that they have. And like, for example, I get people who reach out to me all the time who like 40, 45, who are like, wow, I've had this my entire life, but I just didn't know the language to define it. And the worst part about that is that person thinks it's them, which is exactly what I thought. And so basically what happens is, let's say someone goes through a sales call or a sales meeting and their social anxiety acts up, and then they're like, wait, why did I say that? Or why didn't I say this? Or, I probably embarrassed myself. Basically what begins to happen is, unless that person lacks the training and awareness, they go home and they're like, oh my God, like what's wrong with me? Why am I so stupid? Why can't I just talk to people? And they sort of go down like this like moral ladder where they start to sort of take it personally and think it's their fault and think it's them, when they never make the distinction between, oh, there's me, Mark, and sort of me using my conscious mind to communicate. But then there's sort of like the default anxiety brain disposition that I have that sometimes hijacks my mind and makes me act in certain ways. And so a lot of times people, unless they do that, it causes more issues and more problems and more stress.
Right. So how do you not confuse that? How do people that experience this not confuse it with intuition? Right. Sometimes you have that intuition. You know what? I bet this is happening right now. I need to make sure I'm doing this, that, and the other so that I can get in front of this thing. If you have social anxiety, you completely misread that. But I want to believe that intuition is still very real for people that have had, that experienced a social, a traumatic event, and they have social anxiety now. They still have an intuition. So how do you not confuse it with intuition? How do you keep your intuition sharp even though you have social anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, this is such an interesting question, and I have conversations about this a lot with people, because I'm always trying to figure this out. And man, what really sucks is that when I think back to my earlier life, again, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I honestly don't really think that I could use my intuition because it was hijacked. And a lot of times too, this is why, like, for example, people with social anxiety, for example, like they either have what I said of like they can read people's minds in terms of like, if they're talking with someone, like, right, like for example, like I'm in a meeting with you, before, if I didn't deal with my social anxiety, there would be like this part of in the back of my brain, which is like, oh, look at Samuel's face. He's not smiling. Oh, he's sort of giving a certain look. Oh, that probably means that he doesn't agree with you, or he hates you, or he does that. And so basically the way I think about it is like, social anxiety for many people, it sort of hijacked their intuition, same with their mind. And so what I would say is like, social anxiety, it's like the low sort of buzzing anxiety that's constantly just in the background. Whereas your intuition, that comes up when you're probably not with anybody. You're probably by yourself. You're probably like on a walk, and it's very, very faint. It's a whisper. And like one of the things that I've learned is that I've had to work on my intuition. I've had to really work on it because I've realized like if you spend most of your life not listening to your intuition because the voices of anxiety were louder, then you have to rebuild that relationship. Because I know for me, honestly, I think the only time when I heard my intuition was when I was like 18 and I was actually suicidal. And I was like literally in the middle of being suicidal, in the middle of like a late night walk. And all of a sudden, I don't want to say like I heard a voice, but all of a sudden, like feeling a very, very small like whisper in the back of my mind. I would say that's the only time in my life where I truly experienced my intuition again. And then it really wasn't until I started to meditate where I actually began to tell the difference. And the reason why is because there's many different forms of meditation, but this one I'm talking about specifically is mindfulness meditation, where basically what you do, all you do is you just sit down and you don't focus on anything. All you focus on is just the sensation of your breath being inhaled through your nose and then going through your body and then out of your lungs, then being exhaled through your nose and your mouth. And the only reason why people who train in meditation, the reason why you focus on your breath is because your breath is the only thing that exists right now. If I think of a thought, it's already gone.
Right.
Whereas the only thing that I can truly think about and experience in life is your breath, because your breath never ends. And so basically what you can start to realize is if you sit down for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes and you meditate and you try to sort of, focus on your breath, all of a sudden what you're going to start to realize is that all these thoughts start to come in your brain, all these thoughts that get you to focus on something completely different. These thoughts of like, oh, what's your next meeting? Oh, what do I got to do next? Oh, did I respond back to this person? Oh, what did that person mean yesterday? And all of a sudden you're going to notice all these different thoughts. It's a sort of a never ending stream. And basically once you do that enough, you can actually start to tell what is your unique thought versus what is sort of a random thought that is being spit out by your anxiety and by your ego. And through doing this practice again and again and again, you sort of start to see this. And I know for me, when I started to meditate, it was within like the first 2 weeks of me doing it, it was by far the biggest thing that truly made me question like, wait, like, who do I think I am? Because when I get anxious and all these thoughts, they start telling me, Mark, you suck. Mark, you have no value to add to people. People don't like you.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, when you meditate, and again, it's not instant for everyone. For some people, it takes months. For some, it takes years.
Right.
When you meditate, you sort of, when you're just sitting down and you're in silence, you start to be like, wait, why did my brain just think that? I don't really think that about myself.
Right.
And you start to build this distinction. And then what happens is when you're going throughout the day, whether it's like about your initial question about your intuition, or even just how you not listen to anxiety, meditation is by far one of the biggest tools that people can use for that. Because what you're doing is you're putting yourself in this sort of mental simulation for 10 minutes a day. And for the rest of the day, the other 23 hours and 50 minutes of the rest of your day, now your brain has a reference to like, oh, wait, this isn't me. This is anxiety. And what you can start to do is you can then start to go throughout your life and start to make the actual decisions and the things that you want to say to people without sort of this voice of anxiety, either telling you what to say or telling you what not to say. So I hope that answers your question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that answers my question. I hope I not kind of went
tangent.
Fully. No. That answered my question fully. I completely understand what you're saying now.
It's interesting, right?
It's fascinating. This is fantastic. It's Mark Metry with part 2. So it gets even better. We're going to close it out next week with the last part of our interview, where he really goes deep into the 4 levels of social anxiety. So you don't want to miss that next week. Make sure you tune in. I know some of you are listening to this, and I know that some of you have identified with this. I work with sales reps, I work with sales teams, and these things like this have come up. So to be able to have a resource that's really breaking down what the experience is, how to notice it, and what you can actually do about it is invaluable. So make sure you reach out to Mark Metry if this is something you're experiencing. You can even reach out to us and we can patch you to him. And make sure you look at the show notes or just go straight to the website, look up his episode, and you can find the link to his site, the link to some of his resources right there. Another guest I want to talk about that I keep on bringing up because it's valuable. I'm a part of it, and now you need to be a part of it if financial independence is something you care about. And this is Chris Larson. Chris Larson is someone who walked away from medical device sales, specifically medical device sales. He actually had a stint in pharma very early on in his career, then went to medical device sales, then became a medical device sales leader. And he walked away from a role that was giving him $300,000 a year to throw himself into his lifetime passion of financial investing, more specifically, real estate investing. He knew that making that transition would give him more time with his family, more time to spend with his kids, and allow him to fully focus on what he loves doing for other people, which is helping them reach financial freedom. What I love about the way Chris does it is not only does he have this entire organization that helps you reach financial freedom, he decided to write a book that really wraps up exactly what he believes, exactly what he sees, and exactly what he utilizes to make people more successful. And that book is called nextlevelincome.com. So if you'd like to learn more about his secrets, how he became financially independent, how you can become financially independent as well, then you need to get a copy of this book, Next Level Income. You can find it at nextlevelincome.com/book. And you can learn what he's doing for doctors, medical sales reps, medical sales executives, and even myself, and why we're all on board for this amazing organization and what he's doing and how he's changing our lives. So again, this is Chris Larson with the book Next Level Income. You can find it at nextlevelincome.com/book. And be ready to get your life changed. If financial freedom is something you've ever wanted, thought about it, and you're not there already, then make sure you take a look at this book and look into Chris Larson. Another thing that I want to talk to you guys about is for those of you that want to get into the industry, you need to go to evolveyoursuccess.com. You've been thinking about getting into the industry. Maybe you've been going on interviews. It's not happening. Maybe you've been trying to get an interview. You can't get a single one. Or maybe you're not even sure what you want to do. You're thinking, you know what? I think I want to do medical devices. Wait, I actually think I want to do pharma. Wait a minute. I heard about this other one called biotech. Wait a minute. I heard about medtech or software. And you're not sure which decision you want to make. If it comes to getting into the healthcare sales industry, you need to go to evolveyoursuccess.com. Click on Attain Medical Sales Role, set up some time with us, let's have a conversation, and see if you're a good fit for one of our programs that could literally change your life. The program I'm specifically talking about is called the Medical Sales Career Builder. And it literally changes people's lives because it gets them into the career that they want to be in. So again, visit evolveyoursuccess.com, click on Attain Medical Sales Role, and let's get some time and let's talk about how we can help you. And for those of you out there that are medical sales professionals or you're a medical sales leader, and you've been looking at LinkedIn, you've been on LinkedIn, you've been on the platform, you might have even used it to get your current role or currently using it to try to get a different role. And you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I keep seeing these medical sales reps on here that are really creating brands. Or I keep seeing these people connected to the healthcare industry that really have a voice. And I'm so curious about that. And I've heard that you can generate business through the LinkedIn platform, but I really don't know what that's about. What is that about? Then again, go to evolveyoursuccess.com, click on the LinkedIn branding tab, and schedule some time with us. And let's have a conversation about a program that can change your business. It can change the trajectory of your career. It can change your sales performance. And it's worth it. We are in an amazing time right now. Social media, and you know what, not just social media, doing things with a digital presence and having a digital brand goes so far these days. People do not understand the value. To be able to get access to people you would not be able to have access to otherwise, to provide resources for other people, to leverage relationships with people that really you wouldn't have any idea how to get into touch with. This is what this platform is doing, and it's generating business for people, for myself, for my clients. And if you're someone that has been curious about it, or you just want to change your business, or you just want to do something that's going to bring you more in regards to sales, in regards to your network and your business, then let us help you make the same thing happen for you. Go to evolveyoursuccess.com, go to the LinkedIn branding tab, and let's set up some time and have a conversation with someone from our team. Lastly, for those medical sales professionals out there that are really trying to enhance their performance, same site with the same resources, evolveyoursuccess.com, click on improve sales performance, and let's have some time to talk. It'll be me or one of our sales reps, and we're gonna have a nice conversation about what you can do to really change your career trajectory, and your sales performance. As always, we do our best to bring you guests that bring you insight into this industry, unique ways about how to get in, what happens within, and the different touch points and people that are and relationships that are developed within this industry. So make sure you return next week for another episode, and you definitely need to return next week because of part 3 with Mark Metry, but always check in with us because we're doing our best to bring you guests that are bringing you this valuable information. Thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive-level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.